Hello and welcome back to the Eternal Witnesses podcast, your favorite podcast for competitive, modern, legacy, and vintage Magic the Gathering. I'm back, everybody. I'm your host, Mark Mara, back from a short hiatus. And warping with me today is the Quantum Riddler himself, Michael Mapson. Say hi, Mapson.
Hello.
It's good to be back, buddy. Did you miss me?
I miss you every second we're apart.
That's the correct answer. Very good, very good. I do have to say it was pretty surreal listening to an episode without being on it, but awesome to have Plummer on, and obviously congratulations to him on his win. And I thought you guys did a great job without me. However, I am back for better or for worse. So let's jump into it. Before we jump into it, actually, I do want to remind you that if you are listening for the first time, or if you continue to stumble on us and you haven't hit like or you haven't hit subscribe, you haven't added us to your favorite podcast app, please do that. It really makes a difference, especially if you watch us on YouTube. I don't know if you guys know how YouTube works, but you see ads either way. But until we get to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, we don't get any of that money. So if you do want to support the podcast, the easiest thing you can do costs you nothing but one click. Just click like, click subscribe. It really goes a long way. And we appreciate you guys.
Takes 2 seconds for you, world of good for us.
That's right. Absolutely. It's a free roll, and you don't get too many of those these days. So we're hoping to take it where we can. So we have a pretty interesting episode. There has been a lot that has gone on since we last recorded. So we have Eternal Weekend North America, which Mapson attended. So we've got a legacy main event to talk about, a vintage main event to talk about. RC Houston also happened last weekend with a pretty interesting metagame development between Plummer's win with Belcher at the Pro Tour and that deck being essentially non-existent at the top tables at RC Houston. Blink reigning supreme, a lot of really interesting evolutions in Modern. It's so wild that even after a Pro Tour, the format's so wide open and feels unsolved. So we'll talk about that as well. But first, I really wanted to just kind of share a very brief story and maybe start the episode off with some positive vibes. And this is really because the very, very short version is I played a match in a challenge at this point probably about a week ago against a known streamer. And I tuned into their channel after I had won a very interesting, what I thought was interesting game 3, and really heard this person just kind of tearing apart a lot of my sideboarding decisions and being very negative. And I didn't even say a single word in chat. I just kind of closed the stream. And that kind of stuff normally doesn't bother me. I have a pretty thick skin in my day job. I'm in sales. And so I'm used to hearing no 99% of the time before I hear yes once. And so this stuff doesn't normally bother me. And it really kind of sat with me for a bit, and I was thinking about why, and literally the game before in this event, or the match before, excuse me, my opponent punted in game 2 after they had won game 1, and they put in chat, I said, man, this is my first challenge that I've ever played. This really sucks. And it cost them the game, and we had to play a game 3 that they probably shouldn't have had to play. They should have won the match. And I said in chat, I said, hey, listen, it happens. Don't worry. I've been playing forever. I told a short story. If you've heard me talk about this before, I'm sorry. It pains me deeply. So it's a core memory of F6ing through combat with Bomberman and a showcase challenge winning in. It was Bomberman, so you can tell how long ago that was. But I F6 through a lethal combat by accident, trying to shortcut through Lion's Eye Diamond Prowess triggers with my monks. And so I told the very brief version of, hey, I just F6 through combat in a really big tournament on here once. It happens to everybody. Don't worry about it. Just focus on game 3. And then they blew me out in game 3. And so they ended up winning the match. And I just thought, man, what if I had responded to that opponent who was just playing in their first challenge the same way this person sort of responded to me? And that's what made me feel bad, because Magic has been such a big part of my life, Maps, and I know you as well. A lot of our mutual friendships and friendships outside of Magic started from within Magic. And I just think, man, there's so much negativity and crazy stuff going on in this world that, Magic should be a good place. And even if you disagree with a choice somebody made in a game or how somebody sideboarded, there's a constructive and positive way to say that. And so I'm not going to give you a single detail about who this person was, because I don't want to give them any additional visibility, and I don't want any sort of witch hunt, right? It's not about that. But this is a catalyst for me to kind of, I think, tell some positive stories about Magic. And so Maps and I have decided that, as we approach U.S. Thanksgiving in a few weeks here, or I guess maybe a month at this point, which is very soon, For the next few episodes leading up to Thanksgiving, we're going to share a positive story about magic that's been influential both inside and outside the game for us. Sort of our way of trying to bring some positive vibes here and remind everybody. First of all, it's a game. Second of all, it's a community. Let's treat each other well and be welcoming to everybody, because you never know what somebody's going through or how big of a difference a friendly face might make. And I think Magic's such a great outlet to find common ground with people and to make that happen. So, Mafson, do you want to maybe share a positive vibe Magic story first, and then I'll go after you?
You told me that you wanted to talk about this, and if I was a good podcaster, what I would have done is taken a minute to think about what my story
Oh, no,
might
it's
be.
best when you don't know what's about to come out of your mouth. That's when you know you get the true unfiltered content.
I mean, I've just had a lot of good moments in this game, right? Like I think the community as a whole is very, very like welcoming. And obviously that's not everyone, and that wasn't your experience here, but I think just in general, we're pretty great. And I definitely feel for your opponent, because I don't know how many turn ones I've F6 through, or when
That's
I was new
right.
to
It's like
Magic
part of playing
Online.
Moto, right? Like once every 10,000 turns, you just accidentally skip turn one.
Or do you remember when Leonin Arbiter was like the card in Modern?
Oh,
And
yeah.
I never beat it online because I didn't actually know how to pay the 2.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so every time I played against Epicaxis, it was just automatic strip mine on Ghost Quarter. So for anyone who doesn't know, Leonin Arbiter is this card where you have to pay 2 mana before any player before they search their deck has to play 2 mana. And so people would play it with Ghost Quarter, and they would Ghost Quarter you, and you wouldn't have the mana, so you got strip mined. On Magic Online, if they Ghost Quartered you, you had to click on the Leonin Arbiter to pay 2 before you hit OK. But if you were like me, or I believe lots of other people, you didn't know that. So they would Ghost Quarter you. You wouldn't get the chance to pay. If you were me, you kept thinking Moto was bugged, and you just lost every match. So that stunk. But an actual positive story. One that I don't know why this is one that comes to mind. I actually made a mistake here. So I was judging an event, and a player had said something, and I overheard it, and I definitely heard them say some slur or another. I can't remember what. And so I was immediately like, get out of my event. And they're like, what? I was like, I heard what you said. Like, that kind of language isn't welcome here. It's not tolerated here. Like, get out of my event. And you might be like, this doesn't sound like a positive story. But the player was like, okay, yeah, I'm sorry, and went along with it and was like, I need to do better, whatever. And the store employee said something to me about it. Um, and it actually turned out I had just misheard what the person had said. Because I was like, this was somebody I knew, like not super well, but I was like, I can't believe they would say that thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I had just straight up not heard the right thing. And thankfully, they weren't like too far gone yet. And I was just like, hey, wait, what did you say? And they said it again. And I was like, I'm sorry. I thought you said something entirely different. Like, why did you just go along with it? And they're like, you've always been a good judge, and you were clearly trying to make the community a better place. Like, I thought I might have done something wrong, even if I didn't understand. So I just went along because you're doing your job and making the world better. And so that, like, obviously I messed up, but I really appreciated their attitude to be like, I don't even know what I did, but I'm going to learn from it, and I'm going to improve this community. I just thought that was cool. Also, I let them back into the event.
Yeah. Well, I guess great that, you corrected the mistake instead of trying to, just let it slide, but also good on that player for understanding, right? And, nobody's perfect. So there you go. Some lessons to be learned for sure. Yeah, so my story is about a buddy named Caleb that I was friends with in college. And so this is like this big hippie kid. Like, I mean, I don't even know how to describe him other than he was just like the friendliest, most welcoming person. He could find common ground with anybody as long as they were, trying to be positive and do the right thing in life. And, he was just the kind of person that when you're friends with him, you become friends with a lot of other people that you probably would have never met any other way, just because he draws people towards you, right? He's just so welcoming. And every time you'd walk into his townhouse on campus at college, he'd be like, brother, good to see you. How are you? Give you a hug if he hasn't seen you in a while. You just always felt like you were in good company there. And so I started playing Magic right around Revise, like 1995, 1996. But like many people, I drifted away from the game during various points. And I probably hadn't played Magic. I was in college in the early 2000s. I hadn't played Magic in a number of years, just because I drifted away from the game. And he had we didn't even know what EDH was at the time, but we had these like 8 to 10 player, just battle cruiser, 100 card, 200 card decks, just, free for alls. And, we'd maybe have a couple of beverages as we were enjoying these games. And, it was just something to do for a couple hours with a bunch of people that otherwise didn't have anything else in common. And it was like perhaps the least competitive setup that you could ever have to play Magic. And, it was just a great way for me to get reconnected to the game. Oh, and we have a dog companion now for anybody watching on YouTube. Mapson's dog has joined. But yeah, so it was just like, for me, a really excellent way to get reconnected to the game through some really excellent people. And so Caleb was just such a positive influence, not just for Magic, but I actually called him a couple of weeks ago, right after this incident happened, when I was reflecting on all this. And I hadn't talked to him in probably like 10 years. And he was just like, brother, how are you? Good to hear from you. And it was literally just like we picked up like we'd never left off, essentially. And so, if you have a Caleb out there, somebody that's been a positive influence on your life, somebody that has maybe taught you something about the world and how to engage with other people in a positive way, don't be afraid to pick up the phone, call and say hi and just hear their voice. And I promise you it's a feel-good time. So anyway, that's my story about how my buddy Caleb from Massachusetts pulled me back into Magic in the early 2000s through, of all things, like 8 to 10 player kitchen table battle cruiser Magic. So there you go. Maybe a story people didn't know about me. So on that note, let's jump into Eternal Weekend North America. You were there. I was not. Talk to me about the tournament in general, Mapson.
So first, after how are you and my least favorite question, what's your record? The third most common question I got was, where's Mark? Is Mark here? Can I meet Mark? So
warms my little Grinch heart.
Yeah, I was like, I don't even know why you want to meet him. I'm one of his best friends and I barely want to talk to him. But
you have to let the mystery grow. That's the thing, right? They say never meet your heroes. So I remain mysterious.
But no. You were missed, of course. But it was a great time anyways. Eternal Weekend is so much fun. Just so many friends. And I don't want to say such a small place because the venue's pretty large, but so many friends concentrated in one location. How can it not be a great time?
Yeah. So, okay, I'll skip those first few questions because you say you get them all the time. I'll jump right to perhaps the most important question. What was the best meal that you had during Eternal Weekend?
Best meal I had. Can I even remember where I ate? Oh, this is like kind of cheating, but we went to Nanxiang. I don't know if I pronounced that right. But it's a dumpling place. But it's a chain, so obviously you're familiar with it because we have one near us. And that was really good.
Very good dumplings. You will never get me to tell you that there is a better choice than dumplings. It may be true in some situations, but I'll never admit to it. So I think that's a good call right there. So you played Vintage, you played Legacy. How did it go?
Yeah, so this was my first ever Vintage Champs. So thanks for that, Mark. I went 5-5, which not the most impressive, right? But dead even. So that was kind of my goal, where I was like, if I can go even, like, I will feel happy and accomplished. And I did it, and I had a good amount of fun. It was definitely a little weird. Like, one thing is, I'm used to picking up my opponent's stacks and shuffling it. Like, I'm not one for just doing a normal cut. And in Vintage, that is less common because people don't want you touching their they're expensive cards. And so I had to like stop myself a couple times where I'd like pick it up and then be like, nope, nope, we're setting this back down. But I had fun for the most part. Most of my opponents were really nice. There was one that rubbed me the wrong way, but that happens. And if there's only one over the day, that's not
It's
a
a good
bad
ratio.
record. Um, but yeah, vintage was fun. I played the RSPO, picked up a lot of cards, put a lot of cards back down. I only got to play, I think, like one warm up league, and the few things I did that were kind of interesting was I was on the new Breach tech. So rather than playing fourth Aer Lingus, I played 2 copies of Underworld Breach and a copy of Brain Freeze. And then I also added a Chain of Vapor to my deck because in my league I was like, maybe a smarter pilot would have been able to win these games, but I think there were like 2 or 3 games where I was just like, just having access to a Chain of Vapor that I could tutor for with either Merchant Scroll or Demonic Tutor, like would have given me an out to win this game.
Yeah, and I think that's especially smart if you're not going to play fourth Aerolingus, right? Because that's sort of like the get out of jail button when you get null rotted or whatever, like Tolarian Academy and then a white pip and a red pip, and you can just dome them with a million knights. So yeah, I can get behind a Chain of Vapor.
Yeah, so I was happy with it. Other than that, I basically played the list from Andreas Peterson's Medify. It was good. I really liked the breaches. I'd previously played with fourth, and obviously you lose out on sometimes just being able to go, it's turn one, like cast fourth for 3, and this is probably enough. So that was gone, but Breach also just came down in games where it's like, okay, I'm losing. Okay, I've top decked this Breach, and now the game ends. I also played against Doomsday twice, so just having Brain Freeze in my hand and being like, you can't possibly win because if you Doomsday, I will just remove your deck,
Right.
and when you try to draw a card, you'll lose. So that was pretty sick. And even being a Loris deck, just being able to brain freeze myself on like my opponent's instep and then like untap with Loris was really good.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And for folks that maybe haven't ever had a chance to play with Luris and Underworld Breach together, I'll remind you that Underworld Breach also has the hidden mode of being a 2-mana permanent that you can replay from your graveyard with Luris. So I don't know if that ever came up for you, Mapson, but that's always a fun one when you get to like breach even more times for value than you expected to be able to.
No, that did come up for me, and that was really good.
So my other question, did you get to time walk multiple times with a value breach, or were you primarily breaching for brain freezes or ancestral recalls?
So I did have a turn where I got to just like cast like 3 time walks, I think.
So
And
sick,
was
isn't
like,
it?
I'm not sure how I'm gonna win, but I'll probably figure it out.
Yeah,
Like,
dude, when you get 3 or 4 extra turns, you're just like, yeah, I could be empty-handed. This is vintage. We're good.
plus like you're gonna have access to breach on those turns too.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So that was good. And then I also played Vintage and Team Trios on Sunday. And I went 4-1 in that. And so I felt really, really good about that.
You also played Luris PO in that, I assume?
Yep. No
Awesome.
changes, ran it back.
Cool. And now I know that I've been slowly eroding you like waves against the shore into being open to playing vintage. And, you know, I was able to send power with you so that since I wasn't going this year, which was, I'm so glad that you played and had a good result. Did you have fun? Would you play again? And for folks that are maybe a little bit worried about vintage, like, would you have any advice to them if they maybe have proxy events nearby?
Yeah, no, I definitely had fun. I would play again and I would play the same deck. I mean, it was the most prevalent deck in the room. So like there's a reason behind that. I think it's a really fun deck and it just does really powerful things. I mean, you do have to like, you do have to know what your opponent's doing. So like there might be decks that are maybe a little bit easier to pick up, but like you're just doing such a powerful proactive thing that like, I don't know, you can just do it and you're fine. And like I would say, if people have proxy from the events and they're interested in trying it out, like just do it. Like what's the worst that happens? If you lose all your matches, you lose all your matches. Just play them out though, get the experience. Like you paid 25, $30, whatever you paid, just like, keep yourself entertained. But I had a good experience. I do have possibly another source for power for next year. So when you go, I can still participate on the vintage side. But yeah, I'll be back probably.
Awesome.
This I did miss out on playing the Legacy Platinum event, the aka the High Roller event. So I was a little bit jealous of the people who got to play in that, but it was a cool experience.
Nice. No, that's awesome. And you know for a fact that if you borrow power next year and I go, we drive together, that means that we're guaranteed to be paired in round one for the team kill. So I just, we need to be careful about that.
That's fine. I can beat you.
That's you have quite a bit. I tend to play decks that are a little soft to PO, and you tend to play PO when you do play. So it's even though I've played a lot more vintage, I think our record may not favor me right now. So let's take a peek at how the top 8 broke down for folks that maybe didn't pay such close attention to vintage and were focused more on the legacy aspect. So in first place was Mono White Initiative, which I think, everybody that plays vintage knows that this is a powerful deck, but online it wasn't winning a ton of events heading in. It was, I would say maybe at a normal clip for what you would expect out of White Initiative, where it was always part of the upper echelons of the metagame, but it wasn't necessarily like showing up and winning every challenge or anything like that. So really cool to see a non-blue deck take home the top prize here. I think a pretty straightforward list, relatively speaking. And so that was piloted by Jeremy Henry. So congratulations to him on first. Dave Kaplan finished second on Demir Control. Friend of the podcast, Max Gilmore, who we had on just a few weeks prior to Eternal Weekend, who shared a little bit of his deck selection crisis with us, and it shared that he was worried that he wasn't doing as much winning as he wanted heading into Eternal Weekend. Just like an absolute pro, shows up and crushes and makes top 4. So gotta be one of the all-time great performances to win vintage and then come back in top 4 the very next Eternal Weekend. And I know there's been repeat champs and stuff like that before, and that's absolutely the pinnacle there. But I would say that, especially within the last few years and the types of numbers that this event has drawn in the last few years, like I would guess the competition's probably never been harder. And so for Max to be able to go from a win last year to a top 4 this year is just absolutely incredible. So congratulations to him. Never doubted you, buddy.
I will say, of course, the competition's harder. Max is in it now, right?
Yeah.
Like he wasn't.
Perhaps his biggest advantage is that he doesn't have to play Max Gilmore. So that may be part of the secret, is just be Max, and you'll already have an upper hand.
Yeah, it was an insane run too, because he also top 16 legacy.
Yeah, with a forced loss, by the way. We'll talk about that in a bit, but because he was in the vintage top 4, what did they do? They gave him a win in round 1 and a loss in round 2. Is that how it worked in vintage? So let's please, Card Titan, can we give these folks a bye in the future? Just give him a win.
He doesn't need it.
Well, he could have top 8'd the other one too without the, and I did say this to him, and he said I also could have won more. So that's a winner's mentality, by the way. He said I also could have won more. But so no complaints out of Max, but a complaint out of me. If you make the vintage top 4, you should not have an automatic loss because the legacy main event is scheduled at the same time. You have earned a bye as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, incredible as well to finish in the promo for legacy as well. Just like GOAT performance for sure over these past 2 years. And then rounding out the top 4, Chad Uzel, I hope I said that correctly, on Dredge, the only bizarre deck in the top 8. You love to see it, or at least I love to see it. A lot of people probably don't love to sit across from it. And then rounding out the top 8, there was Greg Mitchell on Esper Luris, Stefan Vastic on Golos Mud, M. Batista on Mono Black Aggro, which I do want to pull up and look at because this was the talk of the town as far as vintage goes. And then Andrews, I can't say the last name, but also on a shops deck here. So I want to pull open this Mono Black Aggro, though. And for those of you following along on YouTube, you can see how it's laid out. I'll just talk briefly through this deck And then, I mean, just absolutely wild. This is, first of all, the first thing to call out, this is an unpowered deck. This an unpowered mono black deck, top aided Eternal Weekend North America, the vintage main event. And so there is a prize for folks that maybe have not played an Eternal Weekend before. There is a prize for the top, I think it's 4 or maybe 5 finishes in the event if you don't register any power, so that's any of the 5 original Moxen, a Black Lotus, an Ancestral Recall, a Time Walk, or a Time Twister. You are also not allowed to register Mishra's Workshop, Bazaar of Baghdad, or Library of Alexandria, which it's time to take that off the list because that doesn't even get played anymore. But regardless, like that's the restriction from Card Titan on the prizing. And so basically it's an incentive for, hey, if you're here at the event already and you don't have power, but you want to play vintage, show up and play anyway. And there's almost like a sub game of you against the other unpowered players. And every unpowered player that I've talked to, of course, has the dream of making top 8, but nobody really expects to be able to do it when you don't have Black Lotus and they have Black Lotus, when you don't have Ancestral Recall and they have Ancestral Recall. And this absolute hero shows up with this mono black deck and is reanimating Grief and is casting Dothy Voidwalkers and is dark ritualing out Barrogoyfs, and the format was just not ready to deal with it. And this absolute hero made it into top 8. And I mean, I was watching on Twitch chat, and folks were just like having a blast watching this guy win. So again, to kind of look at this deck a little bit in more detail, especially for the folks that are audio only. You have a strip mine, you have 4 wastelands, some fetches, and some basic swamps. There's not even a surveil land in here, right? This is just zoom. Make sure you're doing stuff on turn 1, which is really where you want to be if you're unpowered. It's where you have to be if you're unpowered. The creature loadout is 4 Dothy Voidwalkers, so that's going to help you fight against the graveyard decks like Dredge, and also is very good against the Lurrus decks that get a lot of value out of their graveyard. There's 4 Orcish Bowmasters. If you can't play Ancestral Recall, Orcish Bowmasters is one of the best cards to punish Ancestral Recall. There's 3 Barrogoyfs, which, as we've seen in Legacy, it's just a powerful creature if it sticks on the board, and it's an incredible value engine if it gets to hit. 4 Boggart Trawlers. So again, more main deck graveyard hate that also doubles as land, and it also pitches to the next card, which is Grief. So it played 4 Grief, 4 Troll of Khazad-dûm, and so that's the creature loadout. Then there's 4 Dark Rituals, 1 Demonic Consultation, which is just a tutor. Right? So like you got to be careful. You can kill yourself with this thing if you're not careful. You can exile your whole deck. But yeah, Demonic Consultation's in there as a one-off. 4 Fatal Pushes, a Mental Misstep, a Fell the Profane, which is another one of those MDFC lands. The front is 2 black, destroy target creature or planeswalker, and it's an instant. So just more removal baked into the deck. 4 Reanimates, 4 Thought Seizes, a Demonic Tutor, a Lotus Petal, and a Vexing Bauble. I mean, Mapson, what do you think of this list, man? I think this is super cool.
Think that it is not my cup of tea. I'm really excited for this player that they were able to top 8 with no power. I think that's really sick. I know that people had been putting up results with this a little bit before EW, so I really think it's so nice that there is an archetype people can play. And I can definitely see how you would win some matchups. I haven't gotten to watch that much of coverage yet, but I did watch this deck take a win in one of the early rounds. I also played against it on Sunday, though, and I was not impressed. So I don't want to disparage it too much, but it felt like my opponent had to like Dark Ritual into this thing, and I just got to play way more powerful cards. But there were definitely spots where I was like, okay, I can see how this could be problematic. You know, you didn't go over the sideboard, but like they just have a pile of null rods in the sideboard.
Oh, I see that now.
Obviously,
yeah, 3 of them. Yeah.
Yes. So like obviously that card's really good and Leyline is really good. And so I can definitely see how this can stop somebody from playing, and also just like getting turn 1 Grief into Reanimate Grief in a format where Honestly, my impression of vintage is you mulligan a fair bit because a lot, like even though your cards are really powerful, you also have a lot of hair.
Yes, especially
So
in
like,
PO decks where you want like maximum zeros and one drop mana accelerators, you end up with hands where it's all mana. So you're 100% right. Like you do a number of decks mulligan aggressively for sure.
yeah, so like I can definitely see like I feel like I mulligan to 5 fairly often, which is not me complaining to be fair. Like I won a lot of those games. But you know, like I can imagine going to 5 and then my opponent just goes this is on the play and goes like turn 1 grief, take your recall, like lotus petal, reanimate my grief. And then just like the game's kind of over, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And I also think this attacks from an angle that the format is not prepared for or is ill-equipped to deal with, right? Because so much of the format is based around Lurrus, and a lot of the decks that play to the board are Lurrus decks or are Workshops decks or Bazaar decks. And so the way that you combat the Bazaar decks and the Workshop decks is going to be a bit different than you combat the creature decks, or I should say the blue decks with Lurrus, right? And so a lot of the removal that might have been relevant against this is actually shaped against like mana value 3 or less, like Long Goodbye, for example, or like Fatal Push is another one where, Fatal Push is very common removal out of the Lurrus deck that can only hit either a 2-drop or up to a 4-drop if you have Revolt, which Revolt is sometimes surprisingly hard to get in some vintage decks. And so again, like the format, even though there are some cards that can deal with higher mana value creatures, they tend to be pretty limited in the decks that play them. And so sometimes just reanimating a troll on turn 1 or 2 after you've griefed something out of their hand is just like, oh my God, I don't have any way to deal with this. And it could just go all the way, especially as a number of Lurrus decks are blue-black instead of Esper. Like losing Swords to Plowshares puts you in a much tougher spot against a deck like this where a troll on the battlefield is exceedingly hard to deal with, or sometimes even a grief is hard to deal with if you can't get Revolt online. So it was really neat to watch this run and to just see an unpowered deck. And if somebody had asked me what to play unpowered going into Eternal Weekend, I would have said play mono red and try to cheese some people with Blood Moon. But man, there's like another contender here for folks that want some other options to play unpowered if you're looking at any of the other upcoming Eternal Weekends that have yet to happen. This seems pretty sweet.
Yeah, you can play this, you can play mono red, you can honestly play mono white.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a lot of options.
I agree for sure. So let's talk a little bit about let's go over to Legacy here. So you also played in the Legacy main event. How was that?
Yeah, so weirdly, I did worse in Legacy than in Vintage.
Vintage OP.
Yeah, dude, I don't know. I was pretty disheartened after this. And for those who don't know me super well, I am very hard on myself when when Magic events don't go my way. I think Mark can attest to that. So this was pretty disappointing. I had a lot going on this week, so I decided to not be too hard on myself, but I definitely was disappointed. I lost around 1 mirror to I kind of thought my opponent would play one way, and then they didn't, and so I got punished. But like I also probably could have just played better to avoid all of that. But I was like, okay, I lost to Patrick Green round 1, who is like a known strong player. So I was like, yeah, can't be too mad about it. But then it didn't really get much better from there. Like I started 0-3, and I was like, man, this is rough because I very rarely do that. And then grabbed 2 wins. So I was like, okay, we're back. And then I was playing against Mono Red, and I got to make this sick play where they put a Pyrogoyf on the stack, and they had a Chalice out, and they had a flipped Fable and no available mana. And I got to the Swords the Fable, um, Chalice trigger, Consign to counter the Pyrogoyf trigger and to counter the Chalice trigger.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I was like, this is so sick. 'Cause I'm not really worried about the 3/4 being on the table or whatever, but I am worried about that Fable copying at every turn or copying any other card that comes down. So I was like, man, I'm so smart. This play's so good, and it's gonna win me this match. And then my opponent was like, okay, exile Simian Spirit Guide from hand, copy Pyroglaive, kill your thing, like attack you for a lot. And then I died. And then my tournament ended. I was like, no, like I made such a good, sweet play. Like, how is it over? But
Oh
sure enough, it was
man,
over. Um, I made
that
myself
is
feel better.
oh my
Yeah.
God, Maps. And what a roller coaster that story was, dude. And so, although you have heard me say before, at least I died in a new and interesting way. Like if you're gonna get knocked out of the tournament, I guess that's that's one of the ways you want to go, right?
Yeah, so
And
I
so by
dropped.
by
I
by the way, I
played.
I think it's worth calling out maybe for folks that don't play with Chalice or that don't play with Consign or whatever, just kind of how that works, because I think that's an important trick that maybe is a bit known at this point. But essentially, when you use Replicate, it's very similar to how Storm works with Chalice of the Void, where if there's a Chalice on one, you can cast your Consign to memory into the Chalice and pay Replicates. And the actual consign, the object that is created from the physical card that you put on the stack, that does trigger Chalice of the Void, and that one still does get countered, but your replicas are not cast, right? So if you replicate it twice, like in Mapson's scenario there, both of those replicas are placed on the stack, and so Chalice of the Void never triggers. And so this is how, whether it's your Chalice or their Chalice, as long as you have enough mana to replicate, you are throwing away that initial consign copy, but you still do get all of your replicas and can point them at whatever triggers you feel like, including other Chalice triggers on the stack, like which was in this case. So maybe a somewhat known trick to a lot of frequent Legacy players at this point, but if you haven't played with Chalice or Consign in a while, that's definitely something worth knowing. That that's sort of the old trick, like Shattering Spree into Chalice was something that was pretty common in Vintage as well, because you would get the replicates off that as well. So it's similar to that.
Yeah. So after I lost, I signed up for they had a 3-round event where the winner got like 200 store credit. So I signed up for that. I won that. I didn't realize that it was a single limb event. Yeah. So like I beat my round one opponent and they're like, well, time to figure out something else to do. I was like, aren't you just going to play the next round? And they're like, no, you knocked me out of the event. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like I didn't realize that this was like that.
I
Apparently,
love that you just sign up, you sweep it, and you never even had to find out it was triple a limb unless your opponent told you. That's great.
um, apparently, Card Titan has said they're going to try to run less single limb events next year, which I think is a huge boon because it does. Like it's just really unfortunate. I was looking at the slide event schedule, and it's just like almost everything was single limb, and that's great if you're a company who wants our money. But if you're a person who wants to spend dollars and play games of Magic, then it's not great.
Yeah. So I think, like, for example, if it's a bunch of RCQs like you see at Star City events, for example, I love that because you're playing for the invite. And like basically when I'm signing up for that, I don't care about any of the prizing other than the 5-0 invite. And so single limb means, hey, like if I'm gonna die, kill me fast. Let me like just get into the next queue and get into the next one. So I think it's fine for that. But I agree with you. When you're there for Eternal Weekend, you're playing some Eternal Magic. Like I know that they do have some RCQs there that were modern. I don't know if they fired or how. But I mean, people are mostly there to play Legacy and Vintage, and especially Vintage. Like if you're playing inside events and stuff like that, that would certainly be a bummer to be single limb. So I'm glad to hear that they're expanding that and maybe changing the pricing to support it, because it's just so much fun to play Eternal Magic, and people should be able to play as much of it as they paid for, without having to just kind of requeue over and over and shell out, 25, $50 each time. So taking a look here at the Legacy top 8, Forge, Reanimator. So Forge had 3 copies. Blue Black had 3 copies. Although I will point out, that at least one of the blue black lists from Eric Rutkowski is Entombsday, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And so I have the list up on the screen here. And so a lot of people do say 3 copies of Blue Black Reanimator in the top 8. And they would be right, but one also happened to have a Doomsday sideboard plan. And so I thought this deck was kind of neat to look at, a little bit of a twist on the more traditional blue-black Reanimator. So there's still some Tamios and Atraxa, some Archons, Brazen Borrowers, Brainstorms, all that. It does also have main deck Dark Rituals. And in the sideboard is where you have the transformational Doomsday package. So there's a Cavern of Souls to make sure that your Thassa's Oracle gets through. There's a Lion's Eye Diamond, obviously critical to a number of Doomsday piles. Couple of Duresses, typical in combo decks. Edge of Autumn, again, a pretty common piece of Doomsday piles. 2 Thassa's Oracles. Sometimes you see one, but, I guess you see 2 quite a bit as well. 4 Doomsdays, 2 Force Negations, and 2 Street Wraiths. So essentially, it's effectively outside of the couple of Force Negations, which would have some utility in other matchups. It's effectively almost a completely transformational sideboard. And, of course, an incredible finish from Eric, in this event here. What do you think about this take on blue-black, Mapson?
First, I just want to say what a roller coaster of a ride I went on when you said traditional blue-black Reanimator. Because my first thought was, hey, traditional Reanimator is red-black. And then I was like, well, no, because when red-black Reanimator was a thing, I would be like, hey, traditional Reanimator is blue-black with careful study. So I
No,
agree.
I don't mean historical blue black Reanimator. I mean more of like I would say the standard 75 that you see in the metagame today.
Yeah.
So sorry to disappoint on that one.
No, so I've seen these transitional sideboards before. I feel like historically it used to be the other way around where Doomsday would sideboard into Reanimator, and that never made any sense to me because I was like, they're just bringing in more counter spells and like surgical effects, which are like not bad against Reanimator. But I do think the way some people are boarding against Reanimator is they're like boarding down on Force of Wills. They're just going up on like Fairy Macabres and Surgicals and Ley Lines. But a lot of people are boarding out Force of Will, which I don't really agree with. But yeah, if they're bringing in all this grave hate and you're just like, turn 1, Dark Ritual, Doomsday, you definitely make them look really silly.
Yep. Yeah. I think like it's a great swerve. It's on color for what the deck's already doing. Much of the hate is different. And so, yeah, really neat to kind of see a bit of a swerve here, especially because so many players come locked in with predetermined sideboard guides and stuff like that for the specific matchup that, you can easily just snake a bunch of game 2s by having a different game plan there.
Yeah. I'm also just happy for Eric. I don't know him super well, but I did talk to him after his top 8. And yeah, he seemed like a really nice guy, and we definitely have some overlap in friends, and I've heard nothing but good things about him. So I love to see like a good person do well with an interesting take.
Yeah. I've chatted with him just a little bit because we're in a couple mutual discords or whatever, and seems like a great guy every interaction I've had. So really cool to see him make top 8 with a really neat spin out of the sideboard there. Obviously, another just legend is this. Top 8 is labeling it as loam. On stream, it was green black pox or smallpox, but this player was Jacob Murray on the green-black Eumidian Hatchery deck. So for those of you following along at home that may not be familiar with Eumidian Hatchery, and if I am not saying that correctly, this is a perfect use case for YouTube comments. Give me a phonetic spelling because this is a new word to me. This is a land that was in a recent commander set. It was the Edge of Eternity's commander set, I do believe, where it's a land, you tap it to pay a life, and you make a black, and you put a hatchling counter on this land. So it's effectively a mana confluence that only makes black mana, but you put a hatchling counter every time that you activate that mana ability. And then the rest of the text on this card says, when this land is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, for each hatchling counter on it, create a 1/1 black insect creature token with flying. And so this is a land that just through the normal course of casting your spells also becomes a gigantic value engine. And so some ways that you might put this in the graveyard to break parity would be, just as an example, Smallpox, which if you haven't seen Smallpox in a while and you need a reminder, I can't say I blame you, although I will judge you a little bit because it's a cool card. But Smallpox is black for a sorcery. Each player loses a life, discards a card, sacrifices a creature, and then sacrifices a land. So obviously sack a land. You put the Umidian Hatchery into the graveyard, you get your tokens, you get way more value out of the Smallpox than your opponent does just from the land sacrifice. But also, you now have little junky 1/1s that you can sacrifice to the next Smallpox as your creature so that you can keep some of your more meaningful creatures around. So this was pretty neat to see happen on stream. And so the rest of the deck has some Bayous, some Fetches, some Besagus, a Ghost Quarter, some basics, a couple basic swamps, an Underground Mortuary, 4 Urza's Sagas, and 4 Wastelands. So that's the land loadout. And then for creatures, there are 4 Orcish Bowmasters, Barrogoyf showing up again across all formats, 2 Barrogoyfs, 2 Hogaks. Man, be still my beating heart. I loved playing Jund Hogak and Demir Hogak and Simic Hogak, and kind of broke my heart a little bit when Hogak fell out of favor in Legacy. So to see a couple Gaks and to see them back is a smile to my face. Bowmasters being able to be one card that evokes for both pips. Hatchery was often putting like hatchlings in play that would help to evoke this. So like really just some neat synergies with the other cards that were already, very good in the deck anyway. There's a Fatal Push, 4 Thought Seizes, 2 Life from the Loams, really good with the Wastelands and the Ghost Quarters and the Hatcheries, bringing them back over and over. 3 Malevolent Rumbles, just a great card. Not surprised to see it showing up more and more in green Legacy decks. The aforementioned Smallpox, a full play set of those. 3 Witherbloom Commands, 2 Grists, 4 Mox Diamonds for some acceleration, and obviously that plays well with Loam as well. And then some Urza's Saga targets, a Lava Spur Boots, a Nile Spellbomb, and a Pithing Needle. And then out of the sideboard, holy cow, do you see that? A Chains of Mephistopheles, break out the flowchart, a couple of Fatal Pushes, a Haywire Might, 2 Void Mirrors, a Barrogoyf, 2 Toxic Deluges, 4 Ley Lines, and 2 Force of Vigors. So Mapson, you have played a lot of lands-based strategies, more so on the green-white side of things. I don't know if you've ever cast a Smallpox in your life, but this thing seems cool. It's got to be at least a little bit exciting for you to see a deck that has a heavy lands focus doing well here.
I've cast a lot of Smallpox.
Good. I didn't know that about you. That's good. That makes me like you even more, if that was possible.
It's nice to know that we're still learning new things about each other.
That's right.
But yeah, I've actually cast a good amount of Smallpox, more so in Modern than Legacy. But yeah, I like this. I like the looks of this deck. I like Umidian Hatchery a lot. I know I was in our group chat talking about that card just like nonstop for a couple days. I haven't gotten the chance to play with this deck yet. I've heard good things about it. I haven't gotten to see its feature matches yet either. But it does seem like it has a lot of the cards needed to be strong. I do kind of wonder if there's a way, even without playing it, if there's a way to fit exploration in. These decks that have Loam, Diamond, Rumble, like I just really think exploration goes a long way to really letting you maximize what you're doing. Because casting Loam every turn actually costs a lot of mana. And if you're just like buying back a wasteland and then using the wasteland, like you're not actually progressing yourself, So having an exploration lets you actually develop your game plan while you inhibit the opponent. This deck obviously did well, so maybe it doesn't need it, but I would love to fit exploration in here.
Yeah. Well, I think, like, obviously this is a perfect 75, but there may be other perfect 75s as well with a similar strategy here. The other card I was looking at that I thought might be interesting in a shell like this is Ice Till Explorer, which I think we'll probably talk a little bit more about when we get to the modern segment very shortly. But
My
um,
new love.
I know, and I've been enjoying messing around with it myself as well in a couple of different formats. And although Loam and Beseju go together very well, and Ice Till doesn't have the same sort of synergy with the Beseju, Ice Till does play very nice with Urza Saga and with Hatchery and with Ghost Quarter, and does give you like that additional land drop that you get from exploration as well. It is 4 mana, which is tough, especially in like an Urza Saga deck where some of your lands are going away. Like you may not be able to get it online right when you want it to. And the other thing I think probably worth calling out is that, you know, dredging over a Hogak into your graveyard with Loam is sick when you could just cast it and you 100%. Well, I shouldn't say 100% because you still mill cards with Ice Till Explorer, so you could still potentially mill Hogak, but you mill more cards with Loam when you're doing it every turn, so you're more likely to mill the Hogak over. But I think Ice Till would be another neat card to play around with in a shell like this as well. But this just seems super fun, and I'm really glad that it wasn't just all Mystic Forge against blue-black decks in the top 8, because this was a neat one to be able to watch on stream as well. So shout out to Jacob on that one. And then the other deck that wasn't Forge or Reanimator was Cephalid Breakfast, including Nadu from Johan Larsson. I mean, just this guy wins or top 8s, I feel like, every tournament that I see him enter. Like, what a legend. He won like all of the big ones in the EU recently, and is just like, seems like every legacy event that this guy enters, he's just absolutely crushing. I know this was maybe your least preferred Nadu spin on a deck, or maybe your least favorite version of a Nadu deck coming into Eternal Weekend. Has Johan's performance with this deck changed your mind, or is he just like such a legend with this deck that you know, you think it's maybe a level above in his hands as the pilot?
No, so I mean, I still think the deck is really good, even though it's not my preferred way of doing it. And I will stick by preferring naughty mid-range, like with Green Sun Zenith. You know, the decks are very close, so some of it is personal preference. But again, the card quality in that deck is higher than the card quality in this deck, and that is important to me. Um, and the Green Sun Zenith build has a slightly better Reanimator matchup. Um, but, you know, it's one of those things where I'm absolutely not faulting anyone for playing this deck. And obviously, Johan's one of the GOATs. I got to meet him in person. I actually feel a little bit bad because I was like pretty distracted when I met him, and I wish I had taken more time to actually talk to him. Like, it was one of those things where it's like, oh, I
Mm-hmm.
got to meet him, and then I just like kind of moved on. I was like, wait, I actually would have enjoyed interacting with this
Yeah.
human being on like a personal level. Um, but yeah, I mean, dude has been on a tear for however long. It just doesn't seem to be slowing down.
Yeah, just a completely unreal run of top 8s and event wins for sure. For folks that maybe aren't familiar with how the Cephalid Breakfast combo works, this is an oldie where you have Cephalid Illusionist, which is a Cephalid Wizard, a 1/1 for 2 mana, a 1 and a blue. And it says whenever Cephalid Illusionist becomes the target of a spell or ability, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. And then there's some other trinket text on here that generally doesn't matter in most cases. And so what you pair with that is one of 2 things. Nomad's End Core is the one that's been around forever, a common from Stronghold. It's a core nomad soldier for 1 white. It's a 1/1, so it's a 1 mana 1/1, and it has the activated ability. They say they don't do 0 mana activated abilities anymore. They still do sometimes, but this is as we've seen with Vivi, by the way. But this is an old one where it has 0 redirect 1 damage from nomads and core to a creature you control. And so if somehow you're not familiar with this, you don't actually need there to be damage like assigned anywhere or whatever. You can just do this as many times as you want, and it sort of creates a shield. It's a delayed effect. You're the judge. You might know the actual technical term. You might be cringing at how I'm explaining this, but it essentially like it'll queue up for the next time damage would be dealt, and it creates a replacement effect that would move that damage over to the target. And so this combos with Cephalid Illusionist to allow you to put your entire library into your graveyard. You also play Shuko, which is a 1-mana artifact with an equip 0 that gives a creature +1/+0. So that's another way that you can also incidentally find off of Urza's Saga, which the deck also plays. And so between Shuko and Nomad Zencore, you have 6 ways, really 9 if you count the 3 Urza's Sagas being able to get the Shukos, to trigger Cephalid Illusionist to put your entire graveyard or your entire library into your graveyard. Once you do that, you've got a couple of Narcomoebas, a Dread Return, a Thassa's Oracle, and so that's how you win the game on the spot with the combo. Turns out, Shuko and Nomad Zencore also are great with a certain bird wizard that my co-host has been known to cast. So Nadu Winged Wisdom. If you're under a rock, it's a 3/4 flyer for 1 green-blue, so 3 mana. Creatures you control have, whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land, it goes into the battlefield. Otherwise, it goes into your hand. This ability only triggers twice each turn, but famously, the creatures themselves get that text, so you can trigger each creature twice a turn for free with Nomads or Shuko. So it creates an almost insurmountable card advantage once you assemble the combo. So it's interesting that this deck can attack from a couple of different angles. I love that it has the game over button of Thassa's Oracle. It's also interesting that, if you go back and watch some of Johan's feature matches with this deck, there were multiple points where he actually assembled the combo but didn't go for it that turn. Just because he was so aware of the different ways that he could get blown out or lose without, certain pieces of protection to ensure that the combo went through. And so it was also really neat to just kind of see him be able to identify those situations live and in real time, just a master of his craft, like navigating through it. At one point, he had a Shuko on a Cephalid Illusionist, milled 3 cards, and then passed the turn, and just showed extreme patience in waiting to do it. And the thing is, like, you make your opponent make the first move if you're not sure that you can go for it. And then your backup game plan of, hey, sometimes I just get access to like 20 additional cards because I also have Nadu is just such an insurmountable advantage that that this deck attacks from a lot of different angles. So to your point, like it can be disjointed if you draw some of the random combo pieces like Dread Returns and Narcomoebas and Memory's Journey when you don't want it. But like, man, just the fact that you can play the fair kind of Bant Nadu game plan to a degree, or you have the game over button seems really well positioned. And of course, Johan, a master of the deck, just driving it to really good success here. Sideboard is a Cavern of Souls, 2 Consigned to Memories, a Ghost Vacuum, a Pithing Needle, a Prismatic Ending, 2 Swords, a Serenity, 3 Fairy Macabres, and 3 Force Negations. Is there anything from a deck building perspective, sort of being the resident Nadu expert here, that you're surprised about, Mapson? Or do you feel like a pretty typical 75 card configuration for this deck?
No, I mean, it's pretty normal. Ghost Vacuum in the main deck has been on the rise in this list lately. Cameo has been any number between 0 and 4, but I think players are starting to come to the conclusion, turns out Cameo is just a good card here. And the same has been true in the Green Sun Zenith builds. Like, people have been moving towards playing it. I only played one at EW, and I wish I had played more. Andreas Peterson, who I mentioned earlier this episode too, actually just won, I think, the Sunday Challenge. By the time you're hearing this, probably like a week ago Sunday Challenge. But he just won a challenge playing 4 copies in Nadu as well. But yeah, no, I mean, the deck's pretty normal, pretty stock. There's not a lot of room for customization in this deck. It's really the question of how many cameos, how many dazes, how many Teferis, which notably Larson is on 0 Teferis. But yeah, I don't know. It's still not my cup of tea. And it's funny because you're describing this game where he has a cephalid, like he has the full combo in play and just isn't going for it. And that is because there are so many different ways that they can lose from there. But to me, that is just like, if I have this combo and it's not good enough, why did I bother putting it in my deck instead of just putting a real card in? And I know the answer is sometimes you just go turn one nomads, turn two like Cavern of Souls, Cephalid Illusionist, and you kill them and you
GG.
have Force of Will backup. And I understand that's the reason. But it's not for me.
Yeah, no, fair enough. But fantastic result nonetheless. And I think we should probably mention Tom Basketball winning with Mystic Forge. I always get worried when Mystic Forge wins an event that it puts something from the deck in the crosshairs. Don't ban anything, Watsy. Let us be good, please. Let us be good. Um,
So, fun fact about this player,
yes.
and I've heard this multiple times. I have not been reached out to the player to confirm. Tom Basketball is not his real name. A lot
Yeah.
of people were asking about it. And so I apologize if I am promoting a lie here, but apparently his actual name is Brian Hockey.
I'm glad you brought this up, Mapson, because I saw him do an interview for a different YouTube channel. I can't remember where it is. Otherwise, I would plug it. I'm not trying to not share the wealth
Joe
here.
Dyer, MTG Goldfish.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, Joe Dyer did an
I
interview.
haven't watched it yet.
And I did see in the description that it said Tom Basketball, aka Brian Hockey. And so I have seen that as well. I don't know Mr. Basketball / Hockey either. I would love to believe that that's just another layer of pseudonym. I saw somebody jokingly say his real name is James Lacrosse. I hope that this is a meme and it just goes like 10 layers deep. So regardless, a man of mystery for sure. But I like to refer to him as Mr. Basketball to give him the respect that he deserves as the reigning legacy champion. And so just a quick look here at this Mystic Forge deck. Pretty typical land loadout. It's the 20 land Urza's based loadout, so we won't go through that. 4 Flesh Rakers, 4 K Kozilek's commands. I need to not call it K command because that was an actual Kolaghan's command was K command for a long time. So Kozilek's command, excuse me. 3 Tezzerets. Some folks are on 4. Mr. Basketball was on 3. 4 of the Great Creator, 4 Lotus Petal, 1 Opal. Some lists have been completely off of Opal. You don't get Metalcraft with the more modern builds as easily as you think you would. By turn 2 or 3, you often have it, but not on turn 1. And so Mox Opal sometimes is a really good thing to get off of Urza's Saga, but frequently you don't want it earlier than that. And so some lists have completely omitted it, but Mr. Basketball here was on 1 Candelabra of Taunos, obviously makes a ton of mana in the right situations. An Expedition Map, 4 Manifold Keys, a Needle, a Portable Hole, a Soul Guide Lantern, 4 Grim Monoliths, a Basalt Monolith, which combos nicely with Tezzeret and with the keys. We've seen Basalt Monolith kind of fall off a little bit in the early days of the deck. It was always a 3 or 4 of, and then as we got better options, down to 2, down to 1. A lot of decks have been down to 0. We do see 1 here, 2 Mystic Forges and 4 One Rings. So we see a lot of influence from Tezzeret Cruel Captain, which if you're not familiar, 3 colorless to cast it, or 3 generic to cast it for a 4 loyalty Planeswalker. When an artifact you control enters, you put a loyalty counter on it. It's got a 0 to untap an artifact or creature, and if it's an artifact creature, it gets a 1/1 counter. Usually you're untapping monoliths or rings with this thing. Or if you're not doing that, there's a -3 that lets you tutor for an artifact with mana value 1 or less and put it into your hand. So that's why you see this toolbox of 1-ofs, a Portable Hole, the Soul Guide, the Candelabra, etc. Those are all really great things to have as 1-offs if you have a bunch of Tezzerets in your deck. And then the ultimate's a -7. You get an emblem with at the beginning of combat on your turn, put 3+1/+1 counters on an artifact, and if it's not a creature, it becomes a 0/0 robot artifact creature. So a nice little grindy win con as well, kind of all baked into a tight package here for Tezzeret. So that's really the driver behind a lot of the 1-mana 1-offs, is that now you don't necessarily have to wait until turn 3 to get it with Urza Saga. You can often get it as early as turn 1 if you land a turn 1 Tezzeret off of a Grim Monolith. So I think a pretty straightforward list here compared to what a lot of people have been playing. I will say Mishra's Research Desk is a card that I don't love and that I've seen coming up in a lot of lists. I get why people play it. I haven't been a huge fan. And worth noting that there's not a research desk in the main here or in the sideboard. And then sideboard's a pretty typical wish board, and then some Leyline of the Voids and a couple Dismembers and an Ugin Eye of Storms as well. So that's the deck that won, Maps, and I don't know if you have anything else to add. It's awesome to see Mystic Forge win another North America Eternal weekend in a row, but yeah, I mean, don't ban anything, Watsy. I like this deck. Let me play it.
No, nothing to add. The deck is really strong. I don't think it's over the line. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. I don't know. I don't think, even if they do hit something, though, I don't think they would try to kill the deck.
Yeah. I've seen people in like the Mystic Forge Discord worried about One Ring bans and stuff like that. Like, I really hope they don't go there. I really hope they don't ban anything from the deck. But if they do, I hope they also knock the Blue-Black Reanimator deck down a peg and really open the format up. So my pre-November 10th BNR hope is for one of two things. Either no changes or like nuke the format and let's give us something open and fun to play in. And I know that neither of those things are probably very popular opinions, but that's my hot take.
So I don't think the One Ring is going if they hit something. And I could be wrong, but I have like reasons in my head, and I won't bore everyone with them. But I don't think the One Ring is going. But even if it did go, I mean, the deck kind of existed before. It still has some upgrades, right? Like, I know people don't like Mystic Forge as much as the One Ring, but you could go back to playing like 4 copies of that.
Yep, for
and
sure.
still have a deck.
Yep, absolutely. I totally agree with you. All right. Let's talk about Modern. So the Houston Regional Championships, I only have one invitation, so I will be at RC Las Vegas in November. If anybody that missed me at EW will be there. I mean, I don't have social media, but I guess message Mapson and he'll drag me to wherever you are. If you did miss me and you want to say hi, I will be in Las Vegas, but I only had one invitation this season. I did not play very many RCQs, and so I didn't go to Houston. You being the exceptional Magic player you are double qualified, so you played Houston and you'll be in Las Vegas. Just what were the vibes at the tournament in Houston? How'd you enjoy yourself? Was it a good time?
It's funny that you call me exceptional as we talk about my Houston performance, which was very not exceptional. This has been a rough string of tournaments for me. I think I'm just going to become a vintage mainstay and stop
There's
playing
worse.
any other format.
There's worse things you could be.
Dude, I even 3-0'd a vintage cube last night. It's got vintage in the name, so it makes sense,
Specialist.
Yeah, so Houston was honestly not that enjoyable, which is like really disappointing. And I think there's a number of things that go into that. So first, just I had less friends at the event than I usually do.
Mm.
There was like people I know, but like, I didn't have the people I talked to a ton. And I want people to come up and say hi to me at events. I'm not the most social person. So having like the same reliable faces that I always see is very comforting and reassuring
Yeah,
to somebody
relatable.
like me. Um, so the event was not in the downtown area. So I always give myself time to explore the area. And yeah, it was just so hard to get to anything. Like the food options were fine, but like not exciting. So my friend Harley, our friend Harley, I should say, who I stayed with, we wanted to go to Meow Wolf. If anybody hasn't heard of Meow Wolf, they're this really cool company. They do these immersive art exhibitions. So they have actually a couple in Texas. They have one in Vegas, they have one in Denver, and they have one in New Mexico. And I know art isn't necessarily everyone's thing, but they're like these weird, trippy, like otherworldly things, and they have a storyline to them, and they're really fun. So we did the one in Denver together. There's one in Vegas, so I highly recommend people do that while while they're there. But I wanted to go to this one, and like we went, but like, even something like that, like just getting the lift there was like so expensive. Just like going anywhere was just like so much work. So that was just like a little unfortunate versus somewhere where you can walk to the different things and then, less people. Um, but we still had fun. Main event was disappointing for me. I played Amulet as many did. It was actually the most registered deck, which has like never happened.
Yeah, that's
A
wild.
lot,
I
and
think
it
I
really
think
is
like if
wild.
I think if you count the Blink archetypes as one, it beat it. But when you split them out because they are very different decks, then yeah, Amulet is number one if I'm not mistaken, which is like wild, right? Because everybody's always it's like there's the tier zero copy pasta, like it's been tier zero through blah blah blah, but like it's avoided bans because it's hard to play. Well, that didn't stop a lot of people this event. Like a lot of people showed up with this deck, which I know we were texting because I've been planning on learning Amulet for Vegas, and I was like, "Holy cow! I cannot believe that this many people registered it for Houston." So for sure, very
Yeah,
surprising.
it was wild. It didn't work out well for me, unfortunately, but it did have a good weekend in general. I honestly felt good about my play. I felt good about my list. There's definitely a few changes I would make to my list. But yeah, I think my play was largely good. Um, I'm not going to get into it on air. Got a lot going on in my personal life right now. So, like, I might have been distracted more than I usually would be. So, maybe I was playing worse than I think, but I think I was playing well. And I just had a lot of moments that just didn't go my way. And, maybe I could have played better to lead up to those moments. But, like, in round one, uh, I actually played. I'm so sad because I was a feature match, but it was one of the off-camera ones, and it didn't make it. And our game two was such a banger, and I really wish that card. I really wish that match could be on camera.
I
But
was disappointed because you had texted our group chat saying that you had a feature, and I opened up Twitch and I was waiting for the SCG channel to go live, and I'm like, "Oh, they must be doing it on a like an hour delay." And then an hour came and went, and I was like, "They must be doing it on a 2 hour delay." And then somebody was like, "Oh, this is on YouTube." And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" So I tuned in on round 3 and I thought I had missed your feature, but I did look on Melee and saw the result, so I didn't want to bug you about it because I knew you probably wouldn't be too thrilled with it. But I'm at
uh,
least relieved to hear that I didn't miss my opportunity to spam some maps and copy pasta in the chat because I was very ready and I was disappointed with myself not realizing that they had shifted from Twitch to YouTube. So by the way, if you want to make sure that you watch the Vegas RC coverage, go over to YouTube and look up. I think it's SCG Coverage is their actual account because apparently they're going to be doing YouTube from now on. So don't miss your friend's round one feature like I almost did for Vegas.
yeah, so that is a fairly recent switch. But yeah, we had such a good game too, and then uh, I mulliganed all three games, and then in game three, I kept a reasonable hand, and I like my first Titan, like it's answered somehow. I don't remember the specifics. Um, but I just don't draw another spell for the game. I think I had 7 draw steps, and I drew 1 Amulet of Vigor and 6 lands. And it's like, yeah, that is one of the things that can happen when you're playing this deck, but it's not like the deck is like 75% lands, like it's pretty close to 50-50. And I think I'd actually boarded down lands. So I like actually think I had more spells than lands in my deck, and it just couldn't draw them. And that same thing happened in another round where I think you could make a much stronger argument in that like in this other game that I maybe should not have kept my hand and was a little bit tilted. But once the game started, like I think I played about as well as I could, but I went like 8 draw steps without drawing a land, and then I lost a different game three or without drawing a spell, and then I lost a different game three where the opposite happened, and I had access to 5 mana, and I went I think 9 draw steps and didn't hit a mana source. Um, so like I I don't know, like maybe I messed up, but like it's also just hit like basically any land, or in the other games, like almost any spell finds a Titan other than like your amulets, or like at least digs you a little bit. So in those moments where it's just like I can draw any land, it doesn't matter if it's a tapped land, untapped land, bounce land,
Right,
like
right.
whatever. I just give me something, and it just never comes. Like, you know, like it happens. So I wish it hadn't
Yeah.
happened to me, but it happens. And I
Well,
also ran into more Ashiok than I've seen in years,
oh yeah. Yeah,
which
that's
didn't
that's a
matter
tough
that
one.
much. Yeah, but I don't know. Stuff
Yeah.
happens.
So so Corey, I think it was Corey Baumeister said on coverage of the top 8, he said something to the effect of hey, you have to play very well to be at the top tables this late in the tournament, but you do also have to get lucky in a field this big as well, and so you kind of need it all to line up. And it's just a good reminder that you can make the right decisions. You can play in a whole bunch of these. And, I think you had said it when we had Max on, where, far more people lose than win in these events. Like there's only one winner, and this one, 1,045 people entered, or in this case, I think what was it, top 64, top 48 got Pro Tour invites, or maybe it was top 3, whatever it is, right? But like, so few people achieve the upper echelon of success in these things. And so, yeah, I mean, you can just low roll, and there are so few of these every year that, like it's hard for variance to work itself out, even over the course of like 1 or 2 years. And so, yeah, it's unfortunate when it happens, but don't worry, I'll be there in Las Vegas. And so if we scrub out, I'll drag you to the blackjack table with me, and we'll have some fun with cards in a different way.
Um, yeah, so I do want to throw out there for people who are interested in picking up Amulet, there are actually a ton of great resources right now. There's Dom's Amulet Bible, of course, which is free. Ryan Condon of Team Sanctum of All released what I thought was an excellent guide. Mason, I can't remember his last name, Buonadonna, I think, who top aided the PT, released a guide. I know Canister recently released an update to his guide on his Medify. And I haven't read all of these, so like, if you buy it and it sucks, don't like come yelling at me.
No, you
But
can.
these
You can
people are
come yelling at him.
uh, these are smart people, so I'm assuming that they're pretty good. And just kind of the point is there's a lot of them, and there are resources. Um, a few things moving forward is there's a lot of Ashioks. So definitely have a plan to beat that card. And then also, these stupid blink decks have like up to 4 main deck consigns, which
Yeah.
is really obnoxious. So definitely practice against that card and have like it's weird to say have a plan for that card. But like know how it lines up against you and how it can affect your plays, because there are plays where like if your opponent has a consign, you just lose on the spot. For instance,
Mm.
if you go for a scape shift line with an amulet out and you get like Lotus Field, Systemic Growth Chamber, Teleria West, which should let you make 9 mana, transmute for a Titan, or for a Summoner's Pack for Titan, play Titan. But if they just consign your untapped triggers and then you just sacrifice 4 lands, well, now you have no mana in play.
Yep.
Um,
Yep, absolutely. Or if they maybe let all that resolve and then you sack all that stuff and then you can sign the Titan, they may not be able to pay for Pact. I don't know that specific example. My
that also
brain,
works, yeah.
I was gonna say my brain's a little too smooth to process that without the cards in front of me real time. But there's again like at least some situations where you can like strand them without being able to pay for Pact as well. I was gonna ask you how big of a deal that was, so I'm glad you brought it up because it does give me some pause with looking at Amulet with like these Jeskai decks obviously doing so well. The Jeskai Blink deck with 4 main deck consigns. The blue-white ones also are running some number of consigns, a lot of them up to 4. So consign main deck just happening to be good to like stifle the warp trigger and keep your Riddler around, or stifle the Solitude Evoke to keep the Solitude in play if you need some life link. Like it already has value pointing it at your own stuff as the Jeskai player, and the fact that you can put Amulet just naturally into some very weird situations, or just straight up counter an Amulet for a blue that they might not be expecting, is all like really good. And so to be able to play 4 Consign's main, a lot of the commentators were saying that Consign was the card of the tournament. I think Jim Davis had called it the card of the tournament during his part of coverage, just with how impactful it had been in so many matchups, and for those blink decks to be able to legitimately play them main deck and basically be pre-sideboarded in a number of matchups, but still have it be very reasonable, just like against your own triggers, is really some interesting deck building. We should probably take a look at the actual decks that made the top 8. Did you have something you wanted to add, Mapson?
Yeah, I do want to clarify, even though I'm saying be wary of Consign, you are like, as Amulet, you are favored against these blank decks. So it's not like, oh my God, they have Consign, I can never win, right? But you just, you have to play smart because if you don't, you will die.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, good call. Be very mindful of, can I make 2 green if this doesn't go right? And you've been Summoner's Pacting for sure. So I mean, I love Modern right now. I've been playing more Modern than any other format, not just to prep for the RC in Vegas, but also just because, I mean, I can't remember the last time Modern was this wide open. Was it like, right after MH1? Was it right before? I mean, maybe even farther back. There were effectively 6 different decks that were in the top 8. So there were 2 copies of Jeskai Ephemerate, including Vinny Fino's list that won the event. There was 1 copy of Energy, 1 copy of Amulet, run by Collins Mullen, so a name a lot of people know. There were 2 Prowess lists. There was a Pinnacle Emissary Affinity list, and then there was a Gorio's list from Noe Leal Jr., who, for folks that watch coverage, he got quite a few feature matches, both on day 2 and in the top 8. So very diverse.
Shout outs.
Good.
Sorry, I was just going to say shout out to Noe because he is a listener of the show. Shout out to Drew because he is a teammate of mine. Shout out to Collins for repping the best deck.
Yeah, a lot of people to cheer for in this top 8, and just super cool to see how wide open Modern is. And just, I'm kind of blown away because a lot of times after there's a Modern Pro Tour, it sort of, the metagame congeals a bit, and like these pro teams come in and it feels like they crack the format, and then that kind of defines the metagame, and things often, I feel personally, stagnate a little bit after a pro tour. Maybe there's a little bit of a flurry if there's an unknown deck that does well and people kind of latch onto it. But in general, like, I feel like pro tours move us a lot closer to solved formats, and the metagame could not have been more different, but still very interesting between these events. And so I think like Matt Costa was one of the few people that brought Jeskai Ephemerate to the Pro Tour, and he did pretty well there, and it had pretty good win rate at the Pro Tour. Very good, actually, I think. So no surprise to see it doing well here, but I think really interesting that it did so well in this event, but only a few pros brought it to the Pro Tour before. And I think equally interesting to see, Michael Plummer's um, Blue Belcher deck effectively missing from the top tables here in day 2, and not in the top 8 anywhere after winning Pro Tour Edge of Eternities. Like, I mean, what do you attribute this to, Mapson? Like, how is it so different from Pro Tour to what we're seeing here? Like, yeah, there are some similar decks, but like, I mean, to have Belcher not even here at all, to have the Blink decks just like rise up so much, like Prowess coming out of nowhere, 2 decks in the top 8. Like, what do you attribute this to?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot. So first, Costa was really high on his Trust Guy deck, and I know Jerry Thompson hyped it up on his podcast, and then it did well at the PT. So I think a fair number of players picked up that deck, and then there were other Blink strategies. There was an Esper Blink list that did well at the PT, which is a deck that a lot of people kind of already had from the Breach season. So I think a lot of people were excited to try that list out. And so I think those 2 decks, those 2 Blink decks picked up a lot of percentages, or like a lot of gameplay, I should say. And them having the main deck consigns, I think actually does a lot for their Belcher matchups, because you can scrand that Lotus Bloom, you can counter its a trigger to let it be cast, or you can counter the Belcher itself. And Consign is one of the best counter spells against them for both of those reasons, but also because the Belcher deck is so full of counter magic, but you can just replicate your consigns to make sure it actually does what it needs to do through any amount of counter magic. And then you can present such a fast clock. And so I think that this deck lined up well against it, and there was a lot of blank. I think Amulet also put up a positive record against Belcher in this event, and there was a lot of Amulet. So I think the Belcher players probably got knocked out pretty early. I think a lot of people gravitated towards these more fair blink decks because that's kind of the Magic people like to play. And so I think that led to us seeing a very different field. And I think Vegas is going to be very similar to this one. I am curious to see if the amulet numbers hold. I think a lot of people picked it up in part because there is all that content I mentioned, but I imagine some of them will abandon ship and go back to these kind of more fair blink strategies. And I also think we're going to see even more hate for Amulet in sideboards. And when that happens, I think Amulet might start to die down some. It's always hard to know because, for these RCs, people can only adjust so fast. People need to figure out a way to have access to these cards. They need to actually see the data and, internalize it and come to their own conclusions. So paper does always move a little bit slower. Um, but I do think we might see a decline in Amulet, a rise in the Blink decks, especially Jeskai. I think Prowess, just being so fast, I believe Prowess had a pretty good Belcher matchup as well. It's pretty close against Amulet because both decks are so good at winning on turn 3. Um, but I think that deck is fairly cheap. Um, and I think it's the kind of deck where you have a lot of decisions, but because it is such a fast, proactive deck, that's also one where people are kind of incentivized to pick it up for something like an RC, especially if they haven't played a lot of modern recently, just because like when you can kill your opponent by turn 3 without needing to know like any super complicated line, like how bad can any matchup be? Even if you mess up, like how bad can you mess up? And you definitely lose percentage points because being able to do that hard combat math or knowing exactly when to maximize damage with your free spells is very important. But I think that is a good deck for people to pick up. And then the other thing is, I think Brute Scale had a pretty solid weekend. Um, but nobody's really talking about Tron, um, and which is interesting because I feel like every major modern event, Tron gets a huge presence, and I don't think that happened here. So I think that's another thing of note is kind of the disappearance of Tron. So I do wonder too, with less Tron hate, a lot of Tron and Amulet hate overlap. So I'm hoping again to see less Amulet hate. Though there's also the worry that maybe those Tron hate pieces will become Amulet hate pieces, and then I'll be really screwed. Mark, you have muted yourself.
Oh, there we go. You are right that that in the top 16 and top 32 there are some brood scale decks for sure, and I will call out that there are a couple Eldrazi ramps in the top 32 and a couple Trons in the top 64, but they do not love seeing main deck consigned to memories and all these blink decks, and so I think that's at least in part what kept Tron and the Eldrazi ramp decks out of the top 8 here. But yeah, one thing I do want to call out, Vinny Fino, the gentleman who won on the Jeskai Blink deck. I mean, just on the topic of positivity and being excellent, like if anybody didn't see his post-win interview with Nick Miller on Coverage, I'd encourage you to go look it up. I mean, this dude was just ear to ear, pumped that he won, of course, but he spent half of the interview talking about how stoked he was for his friends and teammates that also had gotten Pro Tour invites and had, I believe that the gentleman that finished in second place on Boros Energy, John Clark, I'm pretty sure they said that they were teammates and had played a ton against each other as well. And so obviously Worlds invites to both of those guys finishing first and second. And so he spent like half the time just like being pumped for his friends that also got to go to the PT with him and talking about how he was spectating their games and cheering them on and how he got a little teary-eyed and was celebrating with them. And it was just really cool to see somebody that just won this being like, hey, yeah, this is awesome. I'm super happy, but also like, it's even better because my friends are here. So that group of gamers obviously have cracked the code to have multiple people that are all kind of in the same group. They're getting PT invites. I will also call out, by the way, that he did mention, or I think maybe Nick let the cat out of the bag a little bit with something that they had been talking about before the interview. He did mention that Vinny had told him prior to the interview that he was not planning on playing this deck at RC Vegas. However, when Nick was like, "Are you like, will you share?" and he goes, "No, I think we've already said too much." He said, "I'm not going to tell you what the next technology is, essentially." But it sounded like Vinny and crew that had put up some good results with this Blink deck are already thinking a step ahead about what this win will do to the metagame. And it sounded anyway, and hey, this could be a swerve. He could show up with Jeskai and win this thing again and swerve everybody. You never know. But it did sound like he was not planning on playing this deck again at Vegas in November, which I thought was very interesting. And obviously the sign of a good player is, one of the signs of a good player is being able to predict the metagame and being ahead of the curve. And it sounds like he's already thinking that way, which is pretty neat. But on the topic of Modern, I did want to wrap up here talking a little bit about this unhinged amulet list that you trophied with. So I know some people have been calling for Aftermath analyst bans, really probably, I think, more so because they're annoying on Magic Online than actual power level, but I could be wrong. I don't know. I don't want to speak for anybody because I personally don't think anything should be banned in Modern right now. But I know people have been sort of tinkering around with various configurations and, plan Bs and Cs that don't necessarily involve Aftermath analyst loops with the deck. And you do still have analyst in this list, but you're also doing some other crazy stuff as well. So you've got, I'll just kind of quickly run through the list. Again, for folks that may be listening and not able to watch on YouTube or Spotify video here. So there's 4 Arboreal Grazers. There's 4 Dryad of the Elysian Groves. So Dryad is back, baby. So as you might expect, there are Valakits to be tutored for. There's 3 Ice Till Explorers, which I love a good Ice Till, man. Like, my first reaction to this card, was like, hey, like we've had these effects, maybe not all stapled together, but 4 mana is a lot. Well, 4 mana is not a lot for Amulet Titan, I'll tell you that. And so it has looked pretty good in this deck out of sideboards and main decks when I've played against it. A Cultivator Colossus, which had fallen out of favor, but Collins Mullen ran a Cultivator Colossus in his Amulet top 8 deck at the RC lists we were just looking at. 4 Prime Times, 2 Aftermath Analysts, 2 Spelunkings, so down to 2 from 4, 2 Summoners Pacts, 2 Green Sun Zeniths, 4 Amulets, and then a whole bunch of lands that I won't necessarily go into, but maybe I'll call out that you're on Golgari Rot Farm to support Dismembers out of the sideboard a bit better. Only 1 Lotus Field, which makes sense if you still like Analyst and the mana that it makes, but you're not all in on Analyst. And other than that, I think it looks relatively what you would expect out of Amulet lands. And of course, the couple of Valakits that I had mentioned as well, which of course are sort of the classic win condition when partnered with Dryad of the Elysian Grove. And then out of the sideboards, 3 Vexing Baubles, a Bajuka Bog, 2 Collector Roofs, 2 Endurances, 2 Tireless Trackers, which I know performed very well for you. So I'm interested in hearing about that. 2 Force of Vigors, and then 3 Dismembers. So again, I think, there's no such thing really as a stock sideboard for Amulet these days, it seems like, but I think all like, outside of maybe the Tireless Trackers and Endurances, a whole bunch of cards that don't really look out of place in an Amulet sideboard. So as somebody that has played a little bit of the old style Amulet and is just learning the new style Amulet a bit, I'm gonna shut up. You tell me like some of this off the wall, these choices that you made here, and if you're happy with the list that you trophied with, or if you would, maybe make some other changes if you were running this through another event.
Okay, so right off the bat, I don't know if this list is good or not. I only played these 5 matches. They went very well. It felt good. It felt misbuilt, but still quite good. I did this while at the RC.
Oh, I didn't know
After
that.
Yeah, well, I mean, not like literally in the building, but like, I was still in the hotel. I was scrubbed out. I might have, yeah, I built this on Saturday night, I think, or maybe I built it Sunday morning. I think I built it Sunday morning before going to the hall. Um, but yeah, anyways, I wanted to play Dryad. So the first thing is there's no scape shifts in the main. Because I was like, this card, everyone has all these stupid consigns, and I just like never feel safe casting this card unless I have spelunking. Um, and then I was also thinking about all the Ashioks I ran into, and I was like, man, I wish I had more creatures in play that I could just attack them with, right? So this led me to Dryad. 'Cause Dryad can both attack Ashiok and is not as like the Dryad Valakut stuff isn't as weak to consign. They can consign a Valakut trigger, but then you can just play another land drop and do it again. They've already used their consign. Now what? Um, because I had Dryad, I could go down on the analyst plan because we're less all in on that loop, which so that's why I was able to cut a Lotus Field. And then I also wanted Ice Tills to go with the Dryad because this kind of, well, the Ice Till does multiple things. One, it lets me attack Ashioks. It gives me the extra land drops for the Dryad, and it also fuels Analyst. Um,
Right.
they're so good together. And that's also why I played the second Shifting Woodlands. It's because of how well it works with Ice Till Explorer. Because
Mm-hmm.
when you're just milling things left and right, you're going to get yourself delirium, but you're also going to mill over things you care about. So just having a second Shifting Woodland to increase the chances of you being able to like turn it into something, I thought was going to be really good. Because I have so many 3 drops with the Dryads, I didn't feel like I needed as many Spelunkings because I already have something as my 3 mana play. Um,
Okay.
and so you're missing out on that untap effect, but I felt like I always had 2 Spelunkings in play, which they don't, the second copy doesn't do anything. And even though it's not quite the same as untapping your lands, playing extra land after you resolve your Dryad just means you get to untap with your land untapped anyway. So it's not that different than like it coming into play untapped the following turn, which is like a weird way of looking at it, but it made sense in my head. Um, Dryad and I still just worked great together. I wanted to play Colossus because I missed that card. Notably, Colossus is really bad against Consign, so I kind of went against the like cutting scape shift to play it. But I really love Cultivator Colossus. It lets you win in a lot of spots where like nothing else would, or maybe other cards would, but you just don't have to think about it because sometimes I think people overstate how complicated Amulet is, but you do have those turns that are like rocket science. And I'm still actually waiting on Mark to give me the answer to an Amulet puzzle I positioned to him last week.
Yeah. So
But
for the record, it was about, I don't know, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. He texted me and our friend Josh, who we both were saying we were going to learn this deck for Vegas. He texted us a puzzle. I feel like we were an inch away like 3 different times. And Mapson's been like, you guys have all the pieces. You just haven't put it together. So Josh and I said, listen, we're going to meet up this afternoon. We're going to figure this out. The problem is we met up at a Korean fried chicken and beer restaurant that's near us, and we started drinking. And so we solved nothing. And now I think we lost our original train of thought, but I have not given up, and I will not take a hint under any circumstances. I will either solve this on my own or I'm not playing the deck.
if I had known that, I would have given you an easier puzzle.
No,
Uh,
hard mode only.
but yeah, I mean, this list played out really well for me. I will definitely try it again. I will say my teammates tried it out and they did not have the same level of appreciation after their leagues that I did. So maybe I'm not onto something. Maybe I am. Time will tell. Also, Tireless Tracker out of the sideboard was huge. That card was great for me all RC long. It was great for me throughout this league because, again, my opponents kept having Ashiok, or they would surgical my Titans, or they would do this, or they do that. And this card just kind of came onto the field a lot of times before some of the hate, and it just generates so much value. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, there's like the worry of like, oh, you're turning on their removal, but like you actually have so many creatures that are all must answers that like, yeah, if they have two fatal pushes left in their deck and they kill my thing, that's fine. But all the creatures I played are creatures where you can immediately accrue value anyways. Cause like if you play Dryad into land and they fatal push it, yes, you paid 3 mana to their one, but you still got something. So it's still not that bad of an exchange because you still got to put an extra land in. Same thing if you ice till play a land from your yard and then they fatal push it, like that's okay. Or if they fatal push your tireless tracker, but you already made a clue, like you are okay with all of those exchanges. And even if it's only 1 mana, that's time that they are committing to something rather than developing their board. Or if they're using a solitude on it, even better because you're still trying to kill them with Primeval Titan and now they don't have solitude.
Yeah, 100%. So we should probably read Ice Till in case somebody hasn't seen it yet. So it's 4 total mana, 2 green green for a 2/4 Insect Scout. You may play an additional land on each of your turns, so it's exploration. And it says you may play lands from your graveyard, so it's Crucible of Worlds. And it has landfall whenever a land you enters mill a card. So when you're saying it plays nice with Analyst, for example, it's because it mills cards into your graveyard that Analyst can bring back to make your Analysts even bigger. Also, the additional land every turn and play lands from your graveyard is just generically good, especially in like a deck that already plays Urza Saga and stuff like Lotus Field and things like that. And can sometimes be prone to hate from cards like Ghost Quarter, just being able to like slam this thing and play some meaningful lands, up to 2 of them out of your graveyard that your opponent thought they just answered can really be backbreaking. Something I wanted to ask you about this, Maps, and one of the things that interests me as a true Magic degenerate is pairing Ghost Quarter in Modern with Ice Till Explorer, and I've seen a number of decks that take this angle and use it as an additional angle of attack because a lot of modern decks are playing somewhere between 0 and 3 basics only, and oftentimes do not have a basic for every color that they play. And so to be able to essentially, ghost quarter them off of specific colors and then in grindy games, maybe even completely take off their lands. Um, not necessarily that Amulet wants to play the long, grindy games, but it seemed like a pretty viable game plan in some other decks that are playing Ice Till as maybe a plan C or a plan D that has a low opportunity cost to include when you already have Ice Till. Was there any thought to putting Ghost Quarter in here, or do you just think that like there's already enough lands that don't make green, like it's a bridge too far to sneak a Ghost Quarter in here?
No, you can definitely play Ghost Quarter. I've played it in list. I actually played Ghost Quarter in the RC. And I think if you do play Ghost Quarter, you want to play multiple so that you can find it a little bit easier if you're committing to that plan. Maybe you can get away with only playing one. But yeah, Ghost Quarter Ice Hill did go kind of hard.
Nice. Okay, cool. And let's talk about the tireless trackers in the sideboard before we wrap up here. So tireless tracker, for folks that may not remember the good old days when this thing saw a lot of play in Modern, this is a 3 mana creature. It costs 2 and a green for a 3/2 human scout. When a land you control enters, so it's got landfall. When a land you control enters, investigate. Investigate means you create a clue token. A clue token, if you haven't seen Tameo lately, is 2 colorless, sacrifice this token, draw a card. So basically, when you make landfall, you get a clue. Clues give you cards. So it's really good in grindy matchups. I like this Final Fantasy art, by the way. I'm a Final Fantasy nerd, so sorry if you're a Universes Beyond hater. I don't like a lot of it, but I do love the Final Fantasy art. And it also has the text, when you sacrifice a clue, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So obviously, in grindy matchups, you want something like this because it gives you both card advantage and it sort of has a win con that has a snowbally effect attached to it because especially with cards like Ice Till, you can get multiple landfall triggers a turn and make enough mana to crack these clues and reload pretty fast. Is that the scenario where you found the most value in this, or were you finding this valuable in a wider range of matchups as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's there for the grindy matchups. Another thing of note is sometimes you generate a lot of clues that you can't crack, but then you make a construct and your construct's randomly like an 8/8.
Oh, that's sick. I like that. And so, like, what are the matchups? Because I feel like you could classify so many decks in Modern as grindy these days. Like, would you be bringing in Tireless Tracker, for example, against like a Jeskai Blink deck, or is it more against like the blue-white control deck or something like that? Like, what are an example of some of the decks that are in the current metagame that you might want a Tireless Tracker out of the sideboard in?
Basically, I brought it in against any deck that had, well, I basically brought it in against any deck. um, but I brought it in against basically any deck that had Solitude, any deck that had any form of counterspell, or I thought might have Ashiok. So I- I honestly might have brought it in like 4 out of 5 matches.
Okay. It's interesting against Ashiok, right? Because like they keep you from tutoring for your lands and doing the plan A. Um, but
I mean, you just draw lands, right? And then you crack the
yeah,
clue and you draw lands.
yeah, that's what I mean. It sort of gives you a way to like get value out of the lands you naturally draw when you can't like use them to explode and win the game off of Titan triggers. So that's actually, that makes sense that you would want it against Ashiok as a plan B. Cool. So any final thoughts on modern maps? And I know I am pumped to be playing in Vegas next month, and I am personally thrilled at how wide open this field feels. It feels like you can play really any reasonable deck that speaks to you and have a shot at winning a big event, which is so cool. And I feel like you have not been able to say that about modern too often in the last 5 or 6 years. I'm personally excited. Do you have any thoughts on this modern RC from Houston before we wrap up here?
I mean, I still have a lot of thoughts, but we have gone much longer than usual, and I need to eat and get ready for a concert in 30 minutes. So we're going to have to save them for next time.
There you go. Well, you have a wonderful night at your concert maps. And for everybody
I will.
listening that you won't,
I
you
said I
said
will.
you
I'm
will.
very
I was like,
excited.
I thought you said I won't. I was like, why are you going? Let's keep recording then.
No.
But no,
I'm going to go see Leve, and it's going to be fantastic.
sick. Well, you have a wonderful time, my friend. I will remind you, if you have made it this far into the episode, thank you so much for sticking with us. Hit like, hit subscribe, share us with your friends. I can't tell you how important it is, if you like us, that you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. You can go to ewcast.com, and it has a link to our Spotify, our Apple Podcast, our YouTube channel, our merch store. Everything is right there at ewcast.com. So if you were not able to like our YouTube because you couldn't find it until now, nice and easy to get to. It really makes such a difference for us. So thank you so much for listening. We hope that you'll stick around, and we'll see you next time. That's a wrap.
See you next time. Brian, I have to hit the stop.